Well, look who's on time today. Happy Friday, everybody. You know what song has been stuck in my head this morning? You called my name and I ran out of that place. What a terrible singer I am. I care? No. Do I care if it bothers you? A little bit, because I want you to stay. Hi Nora, hi Benjamin. Great to see you. I'm so happy it's Friday. But I am looking for my binder. Where did it go? Where did my binder go? I am prepped up pretty good today. I haven't got to read our stuff ahead of time, but I have downloaded it. So I'll get to that right away and show you where I'm at. There is something I wanted to bring up really quick. There's three things that I'm into aside from this constitutional study. And I just wanted to make it really clear. My name is Deanna, and I am streaming out of Humboldt County, about Humboldt County, to Humboldt County, and anyone else who cares. And I am into wellness as well. I have a wholesale Christian wellness company. And and I am into building our community in the analog world too, as well as what we have here in our special community that is in the meta, which we all see the dangers of the meta, but we're trying to, if we're going to be here, we're going to make the best of it. And we're going to take their stuff that we're going to take these things that are meant for harm and do them for good. That's the idea, right? I mean, we love our phones, but really the reality is in the end, they were all led astray by their own devices. That's what we've got going on here. A lot of distracted people who don't know their history. I did not know my history. I am guilty. Chief of sinners here. And it's really important that we learn our history, because those who do not know their history are doomed to repeat it. And right now, what we've got going on is we're hanging on to the last of our republic here, and we're being duped into believing that we're a democracy. We are not a democracy. We have democracy in place when it comes to certain things and systems of our committees and governments and things like that. But what we have for government is a republic. And the way they discovered this was by looking at the ancient principles. And so that's what today's, again, is a lot of reading. I'm basically going to be reading to you through and after the questions that we ask. So let me just show you where you can find this study. But what I did want to say about the wellness thing, I didn't get to look through all my messages this morning. I got quite a few messages from people. I love you guys for sending me stuff. I have a research team. I already have a research team, but there's certain things I want to research. I would like to get more targeted with our research, but I love the stuff that people send me. And Chuck sent me a really cool thing today that was, well, it wasn't really cool, but it was a lady in a lab, and she was talking about UTIs. If you are someone that suffers from urinary tract infections, what this lady was talking about was really important. And let me see if I can't drop that link for you. But I want to tell you about D-mannose and just encourage you to get yourself some D-mannose, okay? That is a natural way to combat. It's a natural way to maintain the bacteria in your kidneys. It's a natural sugar. It's a powder. It looks like a flour or powdered sugar. And it is a natural way to flush out your kidneys. And if your UTI has not gone into your kidneys yet, then it will help clear it up. If it's gone to your kidneys, it's too late. You're going to need to get some antibiotics. That's just the way it is. But okay, so I'm looking over here and I'm thinking I might be in trouble for a second because I gotta find my binder. I did not download this next. We'll get through 2 questions. It might be on my kitchen table. It might be out in my sunroom. So, but let's see how far we get through these 2 before I have to walk away. Okay. Question 7 through 12 from the Making of America pertain to the founders' discovery of constitutional principles. Contrast the political spectrum, this is question 7, that politicians and the media use today with the spectrum the founders used. And so that's between pages 42 and 41. And so that's what we're going to do. I got those pages. Oh, there's still a few old pages here I didn't delete, but our new pages are here for you. It must be down here. Where are your pages? Where? Oh, I have to refresh this because this is holding the old notes. That's what it is. That's got to be it. Yes. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. Okay. Oh, and let's see. Do we have our... Oh, look at that. I even have my binder questions. I have the other page. Oh, how interesting. Okay. So my old page had the old 2 questions. Now that I've refreshed it, I lost them, but they're here, aren't they? Oh, darn it. Let's see. Oh, man. Okay. Oh, well, I know what I can do. I got that in my old photos too. We'll pull it up. Okay, sorry about that. I got to get this 2 questions. Let me just see if my binder's not on my kitchen table real quick. Because it's not where it's supposed to be. Okay. Gonna check one more place. Because I was not going to check my couch, but it was on my couch. Okay, sorry about that. Oh, carrot on the floor. Okay, so we're on session 4. Hopefully this might not even be session 4. I'll bet it's not. Let's see. Yeah, we lost these 2 questions. I lost these 2 questions real quick. So let me just add them real quick. Can I? Nope. Okay, that's okay. You're just going to follow along. I'll just read the questions and you're just going to follow along. No big deal. I have the binder. That's all we need. You have the pages right here. So let's just look to them here. Okay, question 1 is contrast the political spectrum that politicians and the media use today with the spectrum the founders used. As a matter of fact, let me write that down in there. Bonnie, hi, love. Good to see you. Contrast the what? Political spectrum that politicians and the media. Political spectrum. Ooh, there's a lot to say there. That politicians and the media use today. That politicians and the media use today. And with the spectrum the founders used. With the spectrum. What, you mean they didn't rely on 365, 24/7 news? Is that what they're trying to say here? They didn't make their conclusions based on CNN. I think that's what they're trying to say here. All right, let's get into it. Here's the page for you to see. Make sure I'm sharing. Yep. Because I'm actually going to read it out of the book. It's easier on my eyes. It's not the greatest photo here, but that's okay. It's there for you guys. I sure like to follow along. Lately, I've been listening to someone read the Bible as I read along, as I follow along. It seems like both of my minds are occupied then. I can't stray off too easily. We're easily distracted. We're easily entertained. And this is the last thing a lot of us may want to do, but it's very important. I do want to do it. That's not me. This is the most important thing I want to do right now. And I want to just encourage you guys to keep with me on it. We're learning so much here. It's one of the most comprehensive studies of the Constitution. This is a study on the limits of our government. This is not about learning about your rights. I think we all got that one down pretty good. This is about the limits of government and being able to speak to those who pose themselves as our government, who are supposed to be acting in these ways, but they do not. And that's a whole nother, thing. We're not going to get into that. So, but we are going to be comparing how did these founders, what is it? Political, how did they put it? Such a weird way they ask these questions sometimes, isn't it? Contrast. When do we talk like that? Contrast. Contrast the political spectrum the politicians and the media use today with the spectrum. Okay, so the lens, right? Here we go. Let me just start reading for you. Take, for example, their method of measuring government. The founders would have been greatly puzzled by our modern measurement, which puts communism at the extreme left and fascism at the extreme right, as though they were opposites. In reality, they are simply different names for similar forms of despotism. The police state. They both belong on the side of the spectrum representing despotic government. The founders had a far more satisfactory scale on which to measure government. They said at one extreme we have too little government, and at the other extreme we have too much government. Or, to express it politically, we have anarchy at one extreme and tyranny at the other. If these were portrayed visually, then it might look something like this. And there's a law, a ruler here that shows ruler's law on the left, people's law in the middle, and no law on the right. Okay. It is interesting to read what the founders had to say about these two extremes. They despised tyranny, but considered mobocracy or anarchy even worse. They felt the greatest challenge to civilized man is discovering some method of structuring a government under the control of the people, which could eliminate both mobocracy and tyranny. They felt that the formula must provide enough government to ensure order and justice, but not so much government that it could abuse power. They referred to this as the medium point or balanced center between anarchy and tyranny. Many times in the past, the suffering people had risen up in revolutionary indignation to throw off the yoke of a cruel tyrant, but each time a tragic thing would happen. Without any knowledge of political science based on sound principles of self-government, the people would soon find themselves quarreling, bickering, or eventually fighting one another. Out of this misame of anarchy and chaos, a cry would eventually arise for someone to take over and restore order. Always there seemed to be some strong man anxious to assume command. Taking control by force, he would soon have order restored, but in the process, the people would be right back where they were before, under a tyrant. The swinging pendulum. The historical swinging of the pendulum from tyranny to anarchy and then back again to tyranny is the history of the French Revolution. The French revolted in 1789 for a good cause, but the extremists seized control and began executing around 4,000 of the best leadership in the country. Lafayette barely escaped, and soon chaos began to reign as anarchy and mobocracy spread throughout the country. Finally, in utter desperation, they appealed to Napoleon to restore order. They even signed a contract with him to make Napoleon and his family the emperors of France forever. In short order, they were back in the hands of total dictatorial authority, precisely where they had been before. This is exactly what could have happened to the American Revolution if Washington had agreed to be king toward the close of the Revolutionary War. Some of the foremost financial interests in America were ready to combine with the military to seize power. Fortunately, Washington knew the pendulum pattern. He not only refused the honor of becoming George I of America, but he pleaded with the military to be patient with Congress until their political leaders had worked the knots out of the system. Washington knew what his fellow founders were seeking. Somehow they had to stop the pendulum from swinging back to a monarchy. They had to set up a system where there was enough government, but not too much. They had to stop the pendulum in the balanced center of the political spectrum. Obviously, the founders were not extremists, either right or left. It is interesting that what they had to say about that balanced center. Jefferson. Two extremes are equally dangerous. Jefferson. We are now vibrating between too much and too little government, and the pendulum will rest finally in the middle. Iredell. There are two extremes equally dangerous to liberty. These are tyranny and anarchy. The medium between these two is the true government to protect the people. In my opinion, this Constitution is well calculated to guard against both of these extremes. Washington. There is a natural and necessary progression from the extreme of anarchy to the extreme of tyranny. Wilson. Liberty and happiness have a powerful enemy on each hand. On the one hand, tyranny. On the other, licentiousness, anarchy. To guard against the latter, it is necessary to give the proper powers to government, and to guard against the former, it is necessary that those powers should be properly distributed. Smiley. I agree that it is, or ought to be, the object of all governments to fix upon the intermediate point between tyranny and licentiousness, lawlessness, or anarchy. Avoid too much or too little. Nicholas. Powers being given for some certain purpose ought to be proportionate to that purpose, or else the end for which they are delegated will not be answered. It is necessary to give powers to a certain extent to any government. If a due medium be not observed in the delegation of such powers, one of two things must happen. If they be too small, the government must molder and decay away. If too extensive, the people must be oppressed. As there can be no liberty without government, it must be as dangerous to make powers too limited as too great. Hamilton. It was a thing hardly to be expected that in a popular revolution, the minds of men should stop at the happy mean which marks the salutary boundary between power and privilege, and combines the energy of government with the security of private rights. Two opposite systems of law. Historically, the founders knew they were pioneering new territory. In the past, 99% of the human race had to live out their lives under what might be described as ruler's law. This is a system with all power in the ruler. Ruler's law comes under different names. A monarchy, which is a royal government by the one. An autocracy, which is a government by the one, or a dictator. A plutocracy, which is government by an exclusive, wealthy class. An aristocracy, which is government by those with inherited titles or those who belong to a privileged class. An oligarchy, which is governed by an exclusive few. An empire, which is an exaggerate of kingdoms ruled by a monarch called an emperor. A military dictatorship, which is government by one or a few top military leaders. Ruler's law is a form of government which allows total authority and power to rest with the central government. The ruler or ruling group makes the law, interprets the law, and enforces the law. This was Madison's definition of tyranny. He said, the accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary, in the same hands, whether of one, a few, or many, and whether hereditary, self-appointed, or elective, may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny. The very opposite to ruler's law is the people's law, which we will discuss in a moment. For the present, let us get better acquainted with the ingredients of ruler's law. The founders considered it to be the greatest enemy of self-government and freedom that has ever been contrived by the mind of man. In the following illustration, we will see how its broad power base of strong, despotic central government hangs menacingly over the people. Kind of reminds me of how Humboldt County leadership did it. They thought they could just write, legislate, and enforce laws. No, you can't, and you will be held accountable. Mark my words. The founders had studied ruler's law and knew its chief characteristics. They are as follows. And there's a diagram above this again that shows ruler's law to the left, with 100% tyranny. To the right is no law with 0% anarchy. And the people's law smack dab in the middle. And there's a diagram of a triangle, all power in the ruler, showing the power from national, state, community, family, and individual. How that can work. The founders had studied ruler's law and knew its chief characteristics. They are as follows. Government power is exercised by compulsion, force, conquest, or legislative usurpation. Therefore, all power is concentrated in the ruler. The people are treated as subjects of the ruler. The land is treated as the realm of the ruler. The people have no unalienable rights. Government is by the rule of men rather than the rule of law. The people are structured into social and economic classes. The thrust of government is always from the ruler down, not from the people upward. Problems are always solved by issuing new edicts, creating more bureaus, appointing more administrators, and charging the people more taxes to pay for these services. Under this system, taxes and government regulations are always oppressive. Freedom is not considered a solution to anything. The transfer of power from one ruler to another is often by violence, the dagger, the poison cup, or the fratricidal civil war. The long history of ruler's law is one of blood and terror, both anciently and in modern times. Those in power revel in luxury, while the lot of the common people is one of perpetual poverty, excessive taxation, stringent regulations, and a continuous existence of misery. These things should not be so in America, y'all. But we are there. I might have read too much. Let me see. I think I was supposed to read 42 to 44 for that one question. Let me see. I think we get the idea. They studied history. They discussed. It was all about tyranny and anarchy. Tyranny and anarchy. We got to be in the middle there. They understood there was a gauge. They looked at history. They looked at what happened with rulers. They broke it down. They wrote it all out. It looks like they did a comprehensive study of forms of government to me to determine how could they put this government in the hands of the people and it not be too slack and just morph and decay, or, not have a government at all. That's what they were working on. That's how they, let's see, contrast the political spectrum. I mean, I just don't even really know how to answer that. I read through it and it's like, the way this question is, contrast and the media and the spectrum. It's all talking points and taglines and gaslighting. Is there anything more to say about the media? They suck. How about that? 8, describe the two systems of law and tell about the founders' efforts to establish the people law. Yes, we are getting into that one right now. So let's see. Two opposite systems of law. Well, we already read a lot of that. Search for the balanced center. Okay, so we're going to read a little bit more of this because I think, we'll read to 47. That the extreme exertion required to write a constitution. This is how they came up with it, you guys. They're recognizing, they're acknowledging their past, humanity's past, rulers, government, what happened, history, the French. They're looking at it like, man, this is a mess. And, they were able to, they didn't know they were going to have a 5,000 year leap with what they created. But that's what they essentially did because of the freedoms that they were able to give themselves and the future. Are we going to be able to give that to our kids? I don't know. Search for the balanced center. The founders were all born citizens of the British Empire, which were structured under a limited form of ruler's law. In the American colonies, however, some elements of people's law were gradually emerging. The oppressive rule of Britain was suddenly terminated with the Declaration of Independence, but it took the founders 11 more years before they could get themselves properly established under a system of people's law. Like any other people who have suddenly become involved in a war of independence, they found themselves suddenly endowed with freedom and did not know what to do with it. Can you imagine? I want to imagine that for just a minute. I feel like I've been living in China for the last 3 years, so don't mind me. This is not my America right now. This is not my America. These men set up and died for us and sacrificed for us. No, it's not. Nevertheless, several of them, especially Jefferson, had enough research to develop an instinct for the task. They knew they had to get the system firmly entrenched in the balanced center of the political spectrum under the People's Law. The political structure they visualized looks something like the diagram below. There is a triangle with the federal government at the top, the several states, thousands of counties, tens of thousands of communities, tens of millions of families, and hundreds of millions of individuals. Under People's Law, which is the balanced center of the founders' political spectrum, governmental power on every level comes from the people themselves. Okay, so their spectrum is, it's their way they're setting it up, and not like a ruler. Okay, I guess that's their thing. They're setting it up more like a trickle-down pyramid, right, than a ruler. I think that would answer that question better. Excuse me. Note that the power base in the people, with a hierarchy of power rising out of them to secure their rights. Jefferson described it in the Declaration of Independence when he said, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Excuse me. Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Not your committees and your, all of your stuff. I'm not even going to go there. I'm just kidding. The more I see how it's supposed to be and the more I see how it is, it's frustrating, but it, excuse me, it's also going to make it easier to formulate documents and thoughts and speeches. You know what I mean? Ding, 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 ding. Red lights going off all over the place. The extreme exertion required to write a sound constitution. Excuse me. In 1775, when the leaders of Virginia saw that the king was disowning his American colonies, excuse me, and treating them like enemies, they recognized that they might be forced into a state of independence sooner than they had expected. The task of self-government had some frightening prospects because if their constitution failed to hold the people together, violent chaos and anarchy could result. What a risk they took. As we have pointed out earlier, by 1776, a total of 6 drafts had been proposed for a state constitution in Virginia. Since Virginia was the largest state, many expected her to lead the way. However, Jefferson read all 6 drafts and was alarmed. They were all defective in many different ways. It will be recalled that Jefferson had already discovered the basic pattern for a model constitution by studying 2 ancient peoples who had both lived under People's Law. He had found that ancient Israel was the first nation in history to have a system of representatives government. Then he discovered that 1,500 years later, the Anglo-Saxons were living under a system which was almost identical. Both Franklin and Jefferson later wrote that these people were the source of the ancient principles, which were the wisest and most perfect ever yet devised by the wit of man. Jefferson was quoted as stating that it was from the Anglo-Saxons that we claim the honor of being descended, and whose political principles and form of government we have assumed. A brief study of each of these ancient principles is profitable in acquiring a deeper appreciation of the source of their great ideas and the pattern which eventually evolved in the Constitution of the United States. First, let us turn briefly to the history of ancient Israel. Yeah, I was reading this morning. I was reading in Leviticus. You know, it was in Leviticus in my read this morning, and it's like my least favorite book. It really is, but it was about bestiality. You shall not lie with any man. We're on the cusp of that, America. We're like literally on the cusp of furries. They've already discovered some pretty sick stuff going on, you guys. What fascinated the founders about ancient Israel? According to the chronologists, the Israelites came out of Egypt between 1490 and 1290 BC. They were led by Moses, a man of great notoriety in their day because he had spent 40 years in the palace of Pharaoh. And Josephus states that he was being groomed to succeed the Pharaoh on the throne. However, an incident occurred involving Moses in the death of an Egyptian taskmaster, forcing him to flee to the area of Aqaba Gulf, where he met Jethro, a spiritual leader of the Midianites. Moses married the daughter of Jethro and served him as a shepherd for the next 40 years. It was at the age of 80 that Moses received his mandate to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. Only after a strenuous journey and several near disasters was he able to bring this multitude to the lower part of the Sinai Peninsula along the Horeb Range. At this point, Jethro came to visit Moses to see how he was governing such a large body of people. The hosts of Israel were no small tribal migration. The census in the book of Numbers gives the number of Israelites capable of serving in the army 600,000, counting those who were older and younger, plus the women, who would be at least as many of the men. It is estimated that the Israelites could have numbered at least 3 million. The problem with Moses was that he had never been taught to govern a large population except by ruler's law. In fact, he had been trained in ruler's law at Pharaoh's palace for upwards of 40 years. Consequently, when Jethro watched Moses trying to handle the problems of all these people alone, he was astonished. Below is a graphic illustration of what Moses was trying to accomplish by himself. Moses learns how to organize the Israelites under people's law. Jethro patiently watched Moses struggling all day long, wrestling with 1,000 bits of trivia, and then retired to his tent at night in total exhaustion. And when Jethro saw that all he did to the people, he said, "What is this thing that you do to the people? Why you sit alone by yourself and all the people stand by thee from morning to evening?" And Moses said to his father-in-law, "They come to me and I judge between one and another." Of course, all of this had the highest motivation and the best possible intentions, but it did not please the aged Jethro at all. He therefore said to Moses, "The thing that thou doest is not good. Thou wilt surely wear away both thou and this principle that is with thee, for this thing is too heavy for thee. You are not able to perform this on your own." Oh, I got the page mixed up. That's this page here. "Hearken unto my voice, and I will give thee counsel." Moses later describes what he was instructed to have the people do. He went before the people and said, "How can I myself bear alone your cumbrance and your burden and your strife? Take you wise men and understanding and known among your tribes. I will make them rulers over you." Notice that the people themselves were to take or choose from among them those who were best known for their wisdom and understanding and bring them to Moses for final certification or ratification as rulers and judges. A model representative government. As we shall soon see in a moment, what Moses actually did was to divide the people, consisting of around 600,000 families, into groups of 10 families each. Each of these groups containing 10 families elected its leader. The first step alone gave Moses 60,000 new elected leaders to assist him. But that was only the beginning. These groups were combined together in groups of 50 families, and once more elected a leader for each of these groups. This gave Moses another 12,000 elected leaders to help him. The next step was to combine the above groups into combinations of hundreds of families. These larger groups also elected leaders, which gave Moses 6,000 more leaders to help him. Finally, all these combinations were put together in groups of 1,000 families. When these last groups had each elected a leader, it gave Moses 600 more leaders of top caliber to help govern the people. Now, add all these leaders together, and what we see was people's law together, and we see what people's law did to give the Israelites efficient and practical government. Instead of trying to rule over the people alone, Moses suddenly found himself with 78,600 elected leaders to help him administer the affairs of the people. After the people had chosen from among their tribal families those in whom they had most confidence, Moses confirms that he had arranged the people as we have described above. Said he, "So I took the chief of your tribes, wise men and known, and made them heads over you, captains over thousands, and captains captains over hundreds, and captains over 50s, and captains over 10s, and officers among your tribe. So, strong local government. Let me see if we're getting into the next question. Systems of law to establish people's law. Oh, yeah. We're well over that. We're in the next question here. What was the next question? What two ancient examples did the founders look into establishing the people's law in America? Two ancient principles, 47, 48. Well, we just read that. What were our two ancient principles? Which were, let's see, it says it right here. The basic pattern for a model constitution, the two principles. Israel was one of those, living under a system which was almost identical. The ancient principles, wisest and most perfect ever devised. A brief study of these ancient principles. Well, it didn't say. The ancient principles are let's see. It's self-government. Form of government. Let's see. Brief study. Ancient principles. I'm trying to find the answer. What's the ancient principles answers? Strong government, right? Model of representative governments. Representatives is one. We should have had the answers by now because we're only supposed to have to read up to 48. What two ancient principles did the founders look to in establishing? So 47, 48. They looked to the Israelites and Moses. What's this one here? Oh, the Anglo-Saxons. That's right. They looked to the Anglo-Saxons. They were the only two that lived under a system of representative government. The Anglo-Saxons and the Israelites. Okay, that's the answer. Let me see how long I'm going on here. Oh, 37 minutes. 37 minutes. Let me see. What's the other questions here? We have three more for this one. Describe Moses' first attempt to govern the nation of Israel. Who counseled Moses to set up a better system? Oh, we already did these answers, right? His first attempt, he was night and day. Night and day, day and night, night and day with the people, right? That's what he was doing. Okay, and so describe Moses' first attempt. That's what we know. He was exhausted. Who counseled Moses? Jethro. Jethro, come on. What are you doing? This thing you're doing is not good, man. That's what he said, right? Tell how it was eventually done. Well, we already did that. Okay, last question for this. And then we'll be through question 12. Identify some of the principles of good government that were evident in ancient Israel. So pages 52 and 53. Where are you? Oh, yeah, I mixed you up. And this will be it. This will be the last page, and we'll wrap this up. And then Monday, we will do questions 13 through 19 from session 4. And we're gonna start getting through these a little quicker, hopefully. But we're learning. That's the most important thing to me, is that we're learning and not that we're racing through this. I must comprehend it. I'm not moving on if I don't feel that I have the answers. I'll sit on it forever if I have to, but we're going to figure it out. And I might look like a dumbass sometimes, but do you think that I care? No, because I am learning. Sometimes we are dumbasses, but learning, then we're not. Then we learn, and then we're not a dumbass anymore. That's my logic. I mean, I don't know about you. This is how I think, Okay, last question. Lessons from the founders learned from people under people's law under the Israelites. Here we go. And this is our final, this is our weekend wrap here too, guys. This is our weekend wrap. As we analyze the details of the administration of people's law during the era of the ancient Israelites, we discover numerous principles of government that were not only identical to those of the Anglo-Saxons, but that are applicable to our own day. Here are some of the more obvious aspects of their culture after they were reorganized according to the system recommended by Jethro. One, first of all, they were set up as a commonwealth of freemen. When you hear the word equity, I think we should be hearing commonwealth in our head. The whole emphasis of Israel's new system was reflected in the proclamation, proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. This proclamation became part of the American heritage when it was emblazoned on what became known as the Liberty Bell. The inscription on the Liberty Bell recalls Israel's system of people's law. Proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. Yes, Lord. Whenever the Israelites fell into the temptation to have slaves or bond servants, they were reprimanded. Around 600 BC, a reprimand was given through Jeremiah. You have not hearkened unto me in proclaiming liberty, every one to his brother, every man to his neighbor. Behold, I proclaim a liberty for you, says the Lord. Fundamental to the entire system of people's law was a strong commitment to a very basic code of solid morality. Similarly, the founders continually emphasized this aspect of constitutional government in a free society. As Benjamin Franklin said, only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. As nations become corrupt and vicious, they have more need of masters. John Adams was equally explicit. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Samuel Adams added a final warning: neither the wisest constitution nor the wisest laws will secure the liberty and happiness of a people whose manners are universally corrupt. The Israelites under people's law were organized in small, manageable units where all of the adults had a voice and a vote. There was a major emphasis on strong local self-government. They had a system of honest money. Based on gold and silver, according to weight, and a strict requirement of honest weights and measures. Not promissory notes. The land was looked upon as a private stewardship of the people, not the government. The rights of the property were protected. The rights of life and private liberty were protected. All leaders were selected with the consent of a majority of the people, not just the board of supervisors appointing them. All leaders were selected with the consent of a majority of the people. All laws came into force only when approved by a majority of the people or their representatives. Accused persons were presumed to be innocent until proven guilty. Do you have a warrant? You don't get to detain me without a warrant. I'm holding trial right now. This Supreme Court is mine. Small S, Supreme Court, right here in my car. Do you have a warrant? Because I have a right to travel. Evidence has to be strong enough to remove any question of doubt. Borderline cases were decided in favor of the accused and left to the judgment of God. The entire code of justice was based primarily on reparation to the victim rather than fines and punishment by the Commonwealth. That's your insurance companies for you. The one crime for which no satisfaction could be given was first-degree murder. The penalty was death. The main thrust of government was from the people upward. Only in a time of temporary crisis was the thrust from the government down. The founders included this in the Constitution under the war powers. The government was required to operate according to principles of law, not the whims of men and women. Because this system expressed the will of the majority of the people, it allowed power to be transferred from one regime to another by peaceful means. When the time came for the United States of America to adopt a constitution, our forefathers modeled it after the perfect Israelite system of administration. All of this now leads us to Jefferson's second field of careful study, the Anglo-Saxons. And we're not getting into that right now. We're done with today's study. So that was it. That was a lot. I learned a lot. I finally got to get what I always wanted to get, is into the meat, get into the Bible of, you got to realize not every one of these Benjamin Franklin was no, devout born again. From what I've learned about Benjamin Franklin, he liked the ladies a lot. And he was kind of a pervert, So the point is, they may not have all believed in God, but they all recognized that a religious people, one that reveres God, one that has a healthy fear, not a terrified, this God's stomping us, but a respect, a reverence, like for like the ocean. You can stand out there and look at all of its beauty, but you better know it could take you out. That's the God we serve. I serve a mighty God, and we're supposed to have a reverence for it, knowing that God sees all. God sees everything we're doing. The things other people don't see, God sees it. And people that are godless right now, I just encourage you to repent, because it's not going to bode well for you. Godless societies and godless people don't end up in good places. They don't end up in good. Oh, Nora, you was prepped up today. Oh, she was prepped up today. Good. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I was on both channels. Just doing that thing. Yeah, complete control. They have complete control. Keep the people in control in the past to keep us from getting to this point. And look how long it took me to get to this point. How long I've been YouTubing. How long I've been, trying to get to the truth, trying to get to remedy, trying to understand what we, how do we get here? Well, we weren't studying. What failed in history? Well, they wanted a king. And God didn't want them to have a king. That's what failed. They wanted a king. And when you go and read how they chose their King Saul, he was quite handsome. He was tall. He was charismatic. He was lovely, like a Hollywood movie star. It doesn't say that he had any kind of character traits that looked out for the people. We're so shallow. The people wanted a ruler. The people wanted a king. That's how it failed. In my opinion, from what I've read in the Bible. And God said no. Hi, Jerry Lee. Good to see you, honey. Always so good to see you, Jerry. So yeah, that was. Oops, I had put that first question down, and I never did send it. Well, I had to screw something up. It just wouldn't be a good study if I didn't mess something up. Oh my gosh, you guys. I hope you're enjoying the study. Next week we'll still be in lesson 4, and I will upload the next page Monday at 12:30. I'll be here. We're trudging through. There's 52 sessions in this binder. But to do one session, it would take 2 hours. And Double Dog suggested I do 20 minutes to a half hour tops. Here I'm at 48 minutes today. I've noticed that the longer streams aren't getting any less views than regular. My stuff is hit or miss. A lot of people watch. I think a lot of people are starting over in the study, and they're catching up right now. So thank you so much, Nora. You make it great. You make it great by being here, you guys. I love your support. It means so much. And I'm so glad that there's a handful of us that want to learn. There are so many eye candies on the internet. There's so many things to get lost in and waste time on. And I just can't encourage you and urge you enough to please, please, please get plugged in your community. Find a rancher, find an egg farmer, find a dairy farmer, find your produce, make your connections. Imagine if the internet went out tomorrow. Are you ready? Are you going to be able to get supplies that you may need? Because as we look around at all of the signs that are going on, food's taking a hit. And we've been warned for a couple of years that we could get hungry. So please, Connect with your community, you guys. We love our YouTube community, and us here, we connect with each other. Like, I've met people in person. We're not just in the meta. And I love this way we can connect, but I love to connect in person even better. Wasn't it great, Nora, hanging out last weekend? Can you believe you were here last weekend? Oh my gosh. And I've had another friend come out from Wisconsin. I've driven to South Dakota. I will go, to meet with people right now. With movers and shakers, it seems like we got to sift through a lot of people who are very busy entertaining themselves day after day after day. At some point, please engage. Please engage. Your community needs you. And this world needs you. Every one of us can make a difference. I really believe that. We all have talents. Your talents aren't going to look like my talents. My talents aren't going to look like your talents, but I do believe in you. So, and I will support you if you go to start streaming something that's going to be educational and help me be able to speak to my city council better. I will come and support you with that. Whatever's on your heart to do. You've got a whole community here that wants to support each other as we are standing up. It has been very hard to stand up a couple years ago. It seems like it's getting easier in some ways and harder in some other ways because people are getting more violent. Some people are getting more violent, but we got to stay brave. And don't forget, when you're weak, you're made strong. God is faithful. Amen. I love y'all so much. Oh, I'm going to close out in Our Father. Why not, huh? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory on earth, now and forever. And God, I pray for each one here that's been listening to me and just trying to learn about our history and our country. And even if they don't believe in you, God, I just pray they would want to be godly, and they would want the truth, and they would want to help our future. And I pray you would give your gift of faith and pour out your spirit of courage on our men and women in this country. Lord, help us to rise up. Help us to stand strong for our future, our kids, and this planet, Lord. It needs righteous people need to be ruling. When the wicked rule, the people groan. When the righteous rule, people rejoice. God, that's our prayer. And we just ask, God, that we could bless you with our hands and feet, that we could come back to you strongly and stand for you, because you're on our side. Like little Davids, help us to be like little Davids, because when we're weak, you make us strong, Lord. You fill us with courage. I pray that for everyone here. Please protect their families. Please keep them safe and healthy, and help them take care of their families. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. I love y'all. Okay, I'll check it out, Bonnie. Thank you. Peace out, people. Have a great weekend.